Sue and David review both racial, cultural minority, and white racial identity development, as this applies to work of psychologists and counselors. Such models address individual differences within racial ethnic groups, going beyond demographic and phenotypic definition of race and ethnicity to address the psychological meaning of racial ethnic group membership. Various identity models pertaining to racial ethnic minorities have been supposed by others, including William Cross, Janet Helms model, Donald Atkinson, George Morton, and different kind of development models. These models share in common the articulation of developmental processes whereby people of color initially value the dominant group and devalue their own group, then value their own group and devalue the dominant group, finally move beyond these conflicts to value both groups. Although most scholars no longer ascribe to invariant stages moments, these racial ethnic identity models provide a framework for understanding the psychological impact that racial ethnic groups membership has on identified development and social constructions of the self. Helms also developed a model of white racial identity development. Central to this model is the influence of racism on white identity. In the white racial identity development model, the first three levels of statuses incorporate racism as a core feature of development, ranging from a lack of awareness about race and racism to beliefs in white superiority. The last three stages involve the development of a non-racist white identity that include the painful realization that racism doesn't exist, that they may lead to over-identification with people of color in a way that actually perpetuates racism, focused on meaning of whiteness and white privilege, and the development of awareness regarding white privilege among with decreased feelings of guilt and commitment to anti-racism. Understanding the racial ethnic identity status of clients can help mental health professionals to focus on systemic issues that play a role in presenting problems. Studies has found relationships between various psychological variables and racial ethnic identity status. For people of color, less mature or sophisticated identity status like pre-encounter have been linked to a high anxiety, low self-esteem, depression, and psychological distress. However, other studies have showed different results, such as positive relationship between less mature or also sophisticated status and low anxiety. This may be attributed to variations in the expression of racial ethnic identity status. For example, William Cross and Beverly Vandiver suggested that there is a possibility for some individuals to have racial ethnic identity status marked by less mature stages, yet have healthy personality profiles, because race may be of low salience to their identities. Janet Helms and Donald A. Cook described in depth some of this research, as well as important applications of racial identity to various psychological services, including individual therapy, group counseling, and supervision. Psychologists focused on the multicultural and biracial people have suggested that traditional racial ethnic identity development models may not be adequate or appropriate for understanding mixed race people. For monoracial identity development models have been used with multiracial population. Other theories have proposed separate models of identified development for biracial multicultural people. Carlos Postpone proposed the first of these models in 1990. Incorporating the concept of reference group orientation as opposed to personal identity, cited in previous racial identity development models, Postpone described 5 stages of biracial identity development: personal identity, choice of group categorization, pursuit to choose one group, denial, like conflict feelings regarding choice of group, appreciation of multiple identities, and integration, experience of wholeness, valuing all ethnic and racial identities. Similar to early monoracial identity development models, Postpone model is a stage model ranging from immature to mature identity resolutions. Others who focus on multicultural identity, such as Maria Root, have questioned the idea that there is a single process of identify development that applies to multiracial people or to people in general. She instead proposes an ecological approach to understanding multiracial identity, emphasizing various contextual factors that influence the way in which multicultural people see themselves. Unlike Postone, she does not believe that integration of ethnic identity is a necessary identity resolution. Multicultural people can identify with one group or the other, change their identity based on context, identify with multiple groups, or development in a new and independent identity as multiracial. In a review of literature on both racial ethnic identity development and psychological functionalities, Mary Melville pointed to the need for research that captures the fluidity of biracial and multicultural identity. Qualitative studies conducted by psychologists such as Root or Melville and colleagues have begun to capture themes not addressed by traditional identity development models. Thus, for example, identifications as both as monoracial and multiracial person. Other multicultural psychologists have focused on ethnic identity. For example, Jean Pinney used the term ethnicity to encompass both race and culture. Nothing disagreement with psychology over what race really means. Similar to psychologists who focus on racial identity rather than race as descriptive or demographic variable, Pinney suggests that it is important to understand the meaning of ethnicity, including the subjective meaning and experience of people from different ethnic groups, and the various labels that people use to describe their own ethnicity. In her 1996 article on American ethnic groups, Pinney states that ethnic identity is a complex cluster of factors that define the extent and type of involvement with one ethnic group. Her multi-group ethnic identity model has several components that address the complexity of ethnic identification, including self-identification, chosen ethnic group label, ethnic behaviors and practices, affirmation and belonging, positive evaluation, preference for the group, and ethnic interest and knowledge. Finlay developed an oft-used scale based on the multi-group ethnic identity model that contains 14 like-type items on the components of ethnic identity listed in the previous sentence and 6 items on other groups' identity. The subscales have been adequate, reliable, with high reliability among colleagues, students. That high school students suggested that ethnic identity might become more stable with development. Studies have found that self-esteem is a positively and correlated with ethnic identity. That ethnic identity is usually more strongly endorsed among people of color than among young white people.